Have you ever walked into a room full of people and felt like everyone else received a set of instructions that somehow skipped you? You laugh when they laugh, speak when it's expected, and play your part well enough that no one notices anything unusual. Yet beneath the surface, there's a quiet feeling that never completely disappears. It's the feeling that you're observing life from just outside the circle instead of standing comfortably inside it. Sometimes you wonder if you're simply too different. Other times you convince yourself you're overthinking it. But then another conversation leaves you strangely exhausted, another social gathering makes you feel lonelier than being alone, and another day passes with the unsettling thought that perhaps you've never truly belonged anywhere. The strange part is that this feeling often follows you no matter where you go. A new school, a new job, a new city, even new friendships seem promising at first. Yet eventually, the same invisible distance returns. It's as if you're searching for a place that exists only in your imagination. But what if that feeling isn't a flaw? What if it isn't loneliness at all? What if it's pointing towards something about your mind that most people never stop to recognize? By the end of this journey, you'll see why the people who never feel like they fit in often carry something far more valuable than they realize. If this already feels strangely familiar, take a moment to subscribe, because what comes next may explain things you've been trying to understand about yourself for years. Psychologists have long observed that the need to belong is one of humanity's deepest motivations. Yet they have also noticed that some people experience belonging differently. Carl Jung believed that becoming your authentic self often requires separating from the expectations of the crowd. The strange thing is that this process can feel painfully isolating before it ever becomes liberating. What most people never realize is that feeling different isn't always evidence that something is wrong with you. Sometimes it's evidence that your inner world is developing faster than the environment around you can understand. For years, you may have interpreted your discomfort as proof that you needed to change. Maybe you tried becoming more outgoing, pretending to enjoy things that never interested you, or hiding the thoughts that made others uncomfortable. But every attempt to blend in probably left you feeling even more disconnected. That's because the problem wasn't your inability to fit in. It was the exhausting effort of becoming someone you were never meant to be. The greatest insecurity you've carried may actually be the first sign that your mind has been searching for authenticity instead of approval. One of the first clues appears in the conversations that leave you strangely empty. You can spend hours surrounded by people and still feel unseen. It's not because you dislike others. It's because your mind naturally searches beneath the surface. While others exchange opinions, you're searching for motives. While they discuss events, you're wondering why those events matter. Psychology suggests that people with a stronger drive for meaning often experience greater dissatisfaction with superficial interactions. The emotional weight of this isn't loneliness, it's a hunger for depth. And once you recognize that difference, you stop blaming yourself for wanting conversations that nourish, instead of simply entertain. But this is only where the story begins. Then something even more surprising happens. You begin noticing patterns that other people seem to miss entirely. Tiny shifts in someone's voice, contradictions between words and body language, emotional undercurrents hidden beneath ordinary moments. At first, this heightened awareness feels like a burden because you can't easily ignore what you perceive. Yet psychologists describe this as increased sensitivity to social and emotional information. The very awareness that makes crowded rooms exhausting also allows you to understand people on a level many never reach. What once felt like overthinking may actually be your mind processing layers others never notice. Eventually, you realize that you've spent much of your life questioning yourself simply because your perspective wasn't shared by the majority. Human beings naturally assume the group must be right. But history repeatedly shows that originality almost always begins as social discomfort. Every independent thinker has experienced the uneasy feeling of standing apart before others understood what they saw. The emotional meaning of this isn't superiority, it's courage, developing quietly beneath uncertainty. If you've ever felt this way, let me know in the comments. Your experience may be exactly what someone else reading the comments needs to hear. Yet another hidden pattern begins to emerge. The people who never quite fit in often become exceptional observers of themselves. Because they've spent so much time wondering why they feel different, they gradually develop extraordinary self-awareness. They notice emotional triggers, recurring habits, and hidden fears that many people go years without recognizing. While others move through life on autopilot, they've been conducting an invisible study of their own minds. The struggle that once felt unfair slowly becomes the source of remarkable psychological insight. But perhaps the deepest transformation comes from discovering that belonging was never meant to come before identity. Many spend their lives shaping themselves to fit into existing groups. Those who never fit are often forced to answer a much harder question first. Who are you when no group defines you? Carl Jung believed that true individuality begins the moment you stop living entirely through collective expectations. It's an uncomfortable path, but it often leads to a life built on genuine self-trust rather than borrowed approval. This is where everything begins to change. You stop measuring your worth by how easily you blend into every room. You become more selective about the environments you enter and the relationships you invest in. Instead of asking whether people accept you, you begin asking whether those connections allow your authentic self to exist. That single shift changes everything because your confidence no longer depends on constant validation. It grows from the quiet certainty that authenticity attracts the right people far more effectively than performance ever could. Imagine waking up without feeling pressured to explain why you're different. Imagine entering conversations without pretending to silence your curiosity. Imagine choosing friendships that celebrate your depth instead of tolerating it. You begin making decisions based on alignment rather than acceptance. You no longer fear solitude because you've learned the difference between being alone and abandoning yourself. Relationships become deeper because they're built on honesty. Challenges become easier because you're no longer carrying the exhausting weight of pretending. Most importantly, you stop seeing yourself as someone who failed to belong and start recognizing yourself as someone who was becoming impossible to imitate. If you're committed to becoming this version of yourself, subscribe and join a community of people who are choosing depth over conformity. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about people who never feel like they fit in is that they believe they're searching for the right place. In reality, they've been searching for permission to become themselves. The distance they've always felt wasn't necessarily separating them from other people. It was separating them from the version of themselves they hadn't fully accepted yet. Once that acceptance arrives, the world doesn't suddenly become smaller. It simply becomes more honest. Maybe you were never meant to fit into every room. Maybe your purpose was to recognize the rooms where your true self no longer needed permission to exist. And perhaps what you've called not fitting in was never a weakness at all. Perhaps it was your mind refusing to settle for a life that wasn't truly yours. Which part of this felt like something you've been living without having the words for? Share it in the comments below. Someone else may need to hear exactly what you have to say.